After my husband died, I took a few days off work to handle the funeral alone. My landlord showed up and said, "You're being evicted. Your husband was 6 months behind on rent." I handed him a check for $100,000 and said, "Keep the change. I just bought the building." Grief doesn't hit you all at once. It creeps in, slow and steady, like a leak you don't notice until the ceiling caves in. When my husband, Aaron, died, I thought the worst part would be the loneliness, the empty space beside me in bed, the quiet moments where I expected to hear his voice but didn't. I was wrong. The worst part came 4 days later when I opened my door to find my landlord, Mr. Holloway, standing there with a folded notice in his hand and a smug little frown on his face. "You're being evicted," he said. "Your husband was 6 months behind on rent." I stared at him, my mind barely able to process the words. 6 months? That wasn't possible. I handled the groceries, the utilities, the day-to-day expenses, but Aaron was in charge of rent. He always assured me he had it covered. My voice cracked. That can't be right. Holloway tilted his head, enjoying the moment just a little too much. "Look, I'm not in the business of sympathy. I sent notices." He ignored them. "Not my problem. You've got a week." A week. My stomach clenched as I tried to piece together what this meant. The funeral had barely ended. My world was still spinning from the shock of losing Aaron, and now I was supposed to pack up and leave the home we had shared? The home I thought was ours? Something inside me hardened. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. Instead, I walked past him into the small office Aaron had kept at the back of the apartment, pulled open the desk drawer, and reached for the checkbook I had barely touched in years. Aaron had insisted on handling the finances. I never questioned it. I trusted him. Now, I flipped to the last carbon copy, searching for the balance of our joint account. And that's when I saw the numbers. $347,000. The air left my lungs. I turned back to Holloway, who was still standing at the door, arms crossed, waiting for me to accept my fate. Instead, I tore out a check, wrote a number far larger than what he was expecting, and shoved it into his hand. His eyes widened as he read it. $100,000. "What the hell is this?" he muttered. "Keep the change," I said, my voice steady. "I just bought the building." I slammed the door in his face. And then, with shaking hands, I sat down at Aaron's desk and tried to understand what the hell was happening. That night, I barely slept. I sat with Aaron's financial records spread out in front of me, my mind unraveling every lie I had been told. We had been living paycheck to paycheck, or so I thought. He had always insisted money was tight. I had picked up extra shifts, skipped small luxuries, budgeted down to the penny. And yet, here it was, proof that he had been hiding hundreds of thousands of dollars from me. The transactions made no sense. Large deposits, irregular but consistent. Not a salary. Not investments. Money that had come from somewhere secret. My hands were cold as I flipped through more documents, searching for answers. That's when I found the bank statement addressed to him, one I had never seen before, from an account I had never heard of. Aaron had been lying to me. For how long? And why? The weight of betrayal settled over my shoulders. I had spent 12 years with this man. I had trusted him with my life. And now, with him gone, I was left picking up the pieces of something I didn't even understand. And then, the phone rang. I flinched. It was nearly midnight. The number was unfamiliar. For a long moment, I just stared at it. Then, with a deep breath, I picked up. "Hello?" Silence. Then, a man's voice, low, measured, like he was testing the waters. "Is Aaron there?" My stomach clenched. "Who is this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. A pause. Then a sigh. "He didn't tell you, did he?" My grip tightened on the phone. "Tell me what?" Another long silence. Then, the words that sent a shiver down my spine. "Aaron wasn't who you think." The man's name was Vincent. He didn't explain much at first. Just that he and Aaron had worked together. That there had been an arrangement. That Aaron had secrets I wouldn't want to know. But I did want to know. So I pressed. And slowly, Vincent started talking. Aaron had been running an illegal operation, helping people disappear. Not in the dramatic, underground crime lord kind of way, but in the way that really mattered. New identities. Clean slates. He had found people who needed to vanish, people with debts, enemies, or pasts too dark to outrun. And he had sold them new lives. For a price, of course, Vincent added. I swallowed hard. "How much?" Silence. Then, enough that he didn't need to be 6 months behind on rent. My fingers curled into my palm. So it was a choice. He had been lying to me, but for what? To keep up the illusion that we were struggling? To keep me out of it? To protect me or control me? And then, another thought struck me. Was he helping criminals? I asked. Vincent hesitated just long enough for me to know the answer. I felt sick. The money, the secrecy, the way Aaron had always dismissed my questions about our finances. He hadn't been struggling, he had been thriving off dirty money. And I had been living in the dark. I didn't sleep. By dawn, I had gone through every document, every record, every piece of evidence that might tell me just how deep Aaron's deception ran. That's when I found her. Marissa Clark. A woman Aaron had wired $50,000 to 6 months ago. I dug deeper, and the more I read, the colder I felt. 3 years ago, she had been married. Then, one night, her husband was found dead in his car. A supposed accident. No suspect. A year later, Marissa Clark vanished without a trace. Until Aaron helped her start over. My pulse pounded. Was she a desperate woman escaping something terrible? Or a murderer fleeing justice? And worse, had Aaron known? Had he cared? And, in the pit of my stomach, the question I didn't want to ask, had she been just a client? Or something more? Aaron was gone. I couldn't confront him. Couldn't scream at him, demand answers, make him explain why he had turned our marriage into a lie. But I could do something else. I could burn it all down. I spent the next 3 days barely eating, barely sleeping, barely existing outside the storm of thoughts ripping through my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Aaron's face, not the man I had loved, but a stranger I had never truly known. I had imagined my grief would be quiet, a slow dulling of pain over time. But this wasn't grief. This was rage. Every hour, I uncovered something new. A different name, a different payment, another piece of a life I had never been invited into. And always, that same sinking feeling in my stomach. If Aaron had been lying about money, about Marissa, what else had he been hiding? I told myself I was just looking for answers. But deep down, I knew better. I wanted justice. I wanted revenge. I started by calling the bank again. I understand I'm not listed on the account, I said, my voice sharp, controlled. But my husband is deceased, and as his next of kin, I need access to his assets. The woman on the line hesitated. I'm sorry, but unless you can provide legal documentation, I cut her off. Check his death certificate. I already submitted it. Silence. Then, the distant sound of clicking as she searched the system. Give me a moment, she murmured. I waited, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles ached. A minute later, she cleared her throat. Yes, I see it now. Oh. That one syllable made my stomach twist. What? She hesitated again. It seems your husband named a secondary beneficiary on this account. The world went still. My mouth went dry. What do you mean? A named beneficiary, she repeated, meaning that in the event of his death, the account would automatically transfer to the person listed. I forced my voice to stay calm. And who is that? Another pause. Then, Marissa Clark. My head spun. The money wasn't meant for me. It was for her. I hung up without another word. My hands trembled as I stared at the papers spread across Aaron's desk. The secret bank account. The transfers. The life he had built behind my back. I should have been crying. Instead, I felt something else, something sharper, something colder. Aaron had planned for her. He had been protecting her. Had she meant something to him? Had she been more than just a client? Had he died with her on his mind, while I sat by his hospital bed, believing I was the only woman who mattered? I had thought the worst was over. But now, I knew better. Aaron was still ruining my life from beyond the grave. And I wasn't going to let him. I spent the next 12 hours doing nothing but searching. I started with old emails. Aaron had been careful, no personal messages, no obvious connections. But he wasn't perfect. There, buried in his archives, I found it. A single forwarded email from an encrypted sender. No subject line. No greeting. Just an address. Brooklyn, New York. I felt my breath catch. I had expected a different state, maybe even a different country. But she was here, just a few hours away, hiding in plain sight. I stared at the address for a long time. I wasn't stupid. If Aaron had helped Marissa start a new life, then she wasn't just some scared woman running from a bad past. She had reasons to disappear. And I had reasons to find her. I packed a small bag, a change of clothes, a folder of everything I had uncovered. The bank statement listing Marissa as Aaron's beneficiary. I wasn't going to Brooklyn to ask questions. I was going for answers. I was going to look Marissa Clark in the eye and find out exactly who my husband had been protecting. And why. The train ride was long, but my mind never slowed. I watched the landscape blur past, my thoughts racing ahead. Would she recognize my name? Would she slam the door in my face? Would she lie, the way Aaron had? Or worse, Would she tell the truth? By the time I arrived in Brooklyn, the sun had dipped low, washing the streets in deep orange and violet. The air smelled like concrete and hot asphalt, a thick, sticky heat pressing against my skin as I stepped onto the platform. I pulled out the address, double-checking the numbers. A quiet street, a brownstone with a narrow porch. Not the kind of place you'd expect a woman on the run to settle. I walked up the steps, my pulse hammering in my throat. I knocked. Footsteps. A hesitation. Then, the door opened. And I saw her. She was younger than I expected. No older than 35, with dark eyes that flicked over me in quick assessment. She didn't look afraid. If anything, she looked irritated. Like she had been expecting this. "You're Aaron's wife," she said, voice flat. Not a question. My nails dug into my palm. "Widow," I corrected. A flicker of something crossed her face. Not grief. Not guilt. Just mild surprise. Then, she sighed and stepped back. "Well," she murmured, "I suppose we should talk." She turned, leaving the door open behind her. A silent invitation. I took a deep breath and followed her inside. The house was surprisingly ordinary. The walls were painted soft beige, the furniture was modern but lived in, with a throw blanket draped over the arm of the couch and a coffee mug resting on a side table. A framed picture sat on a nearby shelf, 2 kids playing in a park. Marissa didn't look like a woman on the run. She looked like a woman who had settled. But I wasn't here to admire her interior decorating. I stepped inside cautiously, letting the door shut behind me. The air smelled faintly of cinnamon, as if she had been baking before I arrived. The contrast between the warmth of her home and the cold rage simmering in my chest made my skin prickle. Marissa walked into the kitchen without looking back, moving like someone who had nothing to hide. I wasn't sure if that made her brave or just a very good liar. She pulled open a cabinet, grabbed a bottle of whiskey, and poured herself a drink. Then, she turned, leaning against the counter as she studied me. "You came a long way," she said finally. I didn't respond. I wanted to see where she would take this first. She took a slow sip of her drink, her dark eyes sharp. "I take it you found the bank records." I swallowed hard. "You were listed as his beneficiary." She nodded, as if this wasn't news to her. "Yeah, I know." The casual way she said it made my blood boil. "Why?" I demanded. "Why you? Why not me, his wife?" Marissa sighed and set her glass down. "I was wondering when you'd come looking." That wasn't an answer. I stepped forward. Aaron was hiding money. A lot of money. He was helping people disappear, selling new identities. And somehow, you were the person he wanted to protect the most. So tell me, who the hell are you? Marissa's expression didn't change. She just tilted her head slightly, as if considering her next words carefully. Then, she gestured to the small dining table in the corner of the kitchen. "Sit down." I didn't move. She exhaled through her nose. "Look, I could slam the door in your face and pretend we never had this conversation. But I won't, because I owe you the truth." She hesitated. I owed Aaron that much too. The way she said his name, soft, familiar, made my stomach churn. I clenched my jaw and slowly lowered myself into a chair. Marissa sat across from me, pushing the whiskey aside. Then, she met my gaze head-on. "I'm the reason your husband was killed," she said. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I stared at her, waiting for some kind of clarification, some walkback of what she had just said. But Marissa just sat there, her face calm, her hands resting lightly on the table. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. "What?" I whispered. Her fingers tapped against the wooden surface, slow and deliberate. "Aaron didn't just help me disappear," she said. "He saved my life. And it cost him his." I gripped the edges of my chair, steadying myself. "Start from the beginning." Marissa exhaled, rubbing a hand over her face. For the first time, she looked exhausted. Then, she started talking. 3 years ago, Marissa had been married. Not to Aaron. To a man named Vincent Russo. The name sent a chill down my spine. Vincent. The same man who had called me. The same man who had known Aaron was dead before I even did. She saw the recognition in my face and nodded. "Yeah, that Vincent." I felt sick. "Who is he?" Marissa leaned back, eyes darkening. "A very dangerous man. One who doesn't like loose ends." I barely breathed as she continued. Marissa had been a different person back then. A different name, a different life. She had married Vincent young, believing he was just another businessman. He owned clubs, restaurants, a few, small, operations that she never asked too many questions about. Until she did. Until she realized the money that poured in wasn't from his businesses. It was from contracts. Not legal ones. The kind where people don't live to see the second payment, Marissa said flatly. Her husband was a hitman, a contract killer, and she had married him without knowing. I swallowed. How does Aaron fit into this? Marissa's fingers curled into a fist. Because he was the only one who helped me escape. The story unraveled in pieces. She had tried to leave Vincent. Not just a simple divorce disappear. But men like Vincent don't let people walk away. And when he found out, he didn't beg her to stay. He didn't cry. He put a gun to her head and told her that if she ran again, he'd bury her. She had no money, no family left to turn to, no options. And then, somehow, she found Aaron. He was different back then, she murmured. He wasn't just some faceless guy behind a screen selling fake passports. He was a good man. I flinched at that. She noticed but didn't take it back. I told him everything. Who Vincent was. What he had done. What he would do to me if I stayed. I had no money to pay him, but he didn't care. He got me out. A pause. And he never forgave himself for it. My throat tightened. Why? Marissa's gaze locked onto mine. Because Vincent never stopped looking for me, she said softly. And when he couldn't find me, he went after the man who helped me instead. The room tilted. You're saying Aaron was killed because of you? Marissa exhaled. Because of Vincent. Because he doesn't let things go. I shook my head, my pulse pounding. No, that doesn't make sense. Aaron died of a heart attack. Marissa's jaw tightened. Are you sure? The air drained from my lungs. Because no, I wasn't. Aaron had collapsed at home. No warning. No signs. I had called 911, done CPR, held his hand in the ambulance, never even considered the possibility that someone had done this to him. But now, a new thought settled over me, heavy and cold. What if it wasn't natural? What if Vincent had found him? Marissa looked away. Aaron called me 2 days before he died. He told me he thought someone was watching him. I felt lightheaded. And you didn't think to warn me? Her eyes flicked back to mine. He made me promise not to. He said he'd handle it. I clenched my jaw, trying to breathe through the rage and fear choking me. Aaron had been in danger. He had known. And he had kept it from me. Just like everything else. Marissa leaned forward, her voice low. Vincent doesn't like unfinished business. If he thinks you know too much, he won't let you walk away either. I stared at her, my hands shaking. For 12 years, I had believed I was living an ordinary life. Now, I wasn't sure if I'd make it out alive. My pulse thundered as I sat across from Marissa, my mind racing with everything she had just told me. Aaron had been murdered. Vincent had done it. And now, I was a loose end. The weight of it settled over me, but beneath the fear, something sharper coiled inside me, something I hadn't let myself feel fully until now. Rage. Aaron had lied to me, kept secrets, and left me in the dark. But at the end of it all, he had died trying to protect her. And even if I couldn't forgive him for the lies, I couldn't let Vincent win. I took a slow breath, my voice steady when I finally spoke. We're going to make him regret it. Marissa frowned. You don't understand. Vincent isn't someone you handle. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't back down. I leaned forward. Then it's time he does. She studied me for a long moment. What are you thinking? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached into my bag, pulled out the file I had been building, and slid it across the table. She flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from confusion to shock. What is this? Vincent's entire operation, I said. Or at least, what I could piece together. Marissa stared at me. How did you? I started digging the moment Aaron's bank records didn't add up. I wanted to know where the money came from, who he was helping. And the deeper I went, the more I found. Illegal shell companies. False identities. Bribed officials. I don't know everything, but I know enough. She flipped another page, her eyes narrowing. This is enough to put him away. I nodded. If it gets to the right people. Her fingers tightened around the paper. You're talking about the FBI. Yes. Marissa let out a slow breath, leaning back in her chair. You really think it's that simple? We hand this over and he just goes to prison. No, I admitted. Not yet. He's careful. He has people in his pocket. If we just throw this in a file and hope for the best, he'll have it buried before they even read the first page. Marissa's expression was unreadable. Then what? I met her gaze, my heart pounding. We make him burn first. The next 3 days were a blur of planning. Vincent was powerful, but men like him only stayed powerful because they controlled the narrative. He operated in the shadows, made his enemies disappear before anyone could ask questions. So we had to bring him into the light. Step 1. Leak the evidence. Marissa had spent years as his wife. She knew his world better than anyone. Using an encrypted account, we sent anonymous tips to investigative reporters, giving them just enough to get curious. Step 2. Make it personal. Marissa called Vincent from a burner phone. Just one message. I know what you did to Aaron. We knew he wouldn't ignore it. He would come looking. Step 3. Give him something to find. I made sure he found me. I made no effort to hide my movements, returned to my apartment as if nothing had changed, kept the same routines. And sure enough, by the third day, I saw them subtle, but there. A car that wasn't usually on my block. A man at the coffee shop who lingered a little too long. Vincent wanted to know how much I knew. So, I let him. I reached out to a lawyer, not a cheap one, but the kind who made people nervous. I made just enough noise to suggest I was preparing to go public. And then, the final step. I set up a meeting. Not with Vincent. With his competition. Vincent Russo wasn't the only man in the business of making people disappear. Marissa had spent years in his world. She knew exactly who would be happy to watch him fall. So, we found them. Not criminals. Not exactly. But people with enough power and influence to make Vincent's life very, very difficult. People who had been waiting for an opportunity to take his seat at the table. And we gave it to them. We arranged a meeting in a high-end hotel under the guise of cutting a deal. But what we actually did was hand over everything. The documents. The transfers. The people he had bribed, the names of those he had killed. All of it. And in exchange, they did the one thing Vincent could never undo. They made the story public. By morning, Vincent Russo's face was everywhere. The financial crimes. The murder allegations. The bodies linked to his name. Every journalist we had tipped off ran with it. The walls closed in fast. His allies dropped him. His accounts were frozen. And within a week, he was indicted. Vincent Russo was no longer a ghost in the shadows. He was front-page news. And for a man who thrived on control, losing that was worse than death. I stood outside my apartment the day I knew it was over. Marissa pulled up beside me, rolling down her window. "It's done," she said. I nodded. Vincent was gone, not dead, but erased. Without his money, his power, or his reputation, he was nothing. And that was the best revenge of all. I turned to Marissa. "So what happens now?" She smiled faintly. "That's up to us." For the first time in weeks, I took a deep breath. No fear. No uncertainty. Just a future that finally belonged to me.